Welcome to Between Authors. I'm your host, author Adrian Lopez. What is it that excites us as a reader? It's finding that book or author that you may never have heard of, sort of like the treasure hunt as a reader. The goal from my podcast is to bring to you those books or authors that you may never have found, but may be the treasure you've been hunting for all along. Today in episode 39, I bring to you Author Larae. We're going to go over a little bit about who she is, what she's working on, what she's published, and maybe what her plans are for the future. Welcome to the show, Larae.
Hi. See. Thank you for
Happy to,
having me.
absolutely happy to have you here today. Why don't you begin? Why don't you give a little introduction to yourself to the viewers?
Um, so I'm actually debuting my first book. It comes out February 17th. I've always wanted to write and I've always had small ideas, but this is the first story that I actually completed. And I sent it out to a couple of beta readers and then they gave me their feedback and I started the process and now I'm just happy that I finally have a book out.
Well, congratulations for that. It's always the hardest one to do, the first one to get that first step to get it out there. And you're doing this self-published, correct?
I am.
Okay. So before we get into the book, why don't you give the viewers a little kind of a background in terms of your influences? What creatively influences you? And it doesn't necessarily have to be other authors or books.
I think some influences, I would say a big one would be Lady Gaga. And I say that because she's very theatrical in everything she does. And I kind of took that aspect, like when I chose a cover for my book, and I was like, I just have to have that artistic ability through everything, including like the formation of the book, how it looks formatted. Um, so I love Lady Gaga. Other things, like I hear certain songs and certain songs inspire a portion of the book. Um, why, writing wise, I think probably my favorite author is going to be Suzanne Collins. When The Hunger Games came out, I read that one multiple times. I'm
Mm-hmm.
trying to read other books, but it's hard for me to read while I'm writing.
Yeah. Yeah. It's always, it really is a lot of times a time issue. I mean, you just don't have the free time when you're doing this because, when you're going through edits, when you're going through writing, when you're going through, just the double checks of everything, it's hard to find that time to be able to sit down and really read some other stuff.
Yes. And then for me, I'm like, personally, I feel the emotions. So I go through emotions and it's hard to let a different thing influence me when I'm supposed to be thinking of a certain thing.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's really the beauty of almost any kind of art, right? Whether it's music, movies, paintings, or books, is that connection to that, right? When you have those emotions that you're feeling, that you're connecting to, that's really the beauty of the creation that you're viewing or reading.
Hmm. Yes, I think so. I even made a playlist just so I could listen to, so I could write it out. Right now, I'm breaking the big playlist of the series down to each
Mhm.
part. So,
Yeah, that's something that I've noticed that a lot of authors are starting to do a lot more, making a playlist for the book to get you kind of in the mood of the book, of kind of as you go through the story. Is that something that you will release, when your book's out, or something maybe you'll release later, an actual playlist that goes along with the book?
yes. So, part one's playlist, I have it on my website. Um, so if anybody wants to listen to it, they can. I just put part two's playlist, so that one I'm excited about.
Did you and I don't think there's a wrong or right way to do this, but did you actually put the link to your playlist in your book somewhere printed where people could find it if they're interested to look at the playlist?
So what I did was I didn't put a link in my book. I just put the website name. So if you
Okay.
want to look up the website, it will give you that. Just scroll through. It gives you all information about the book, a little background. Um, it has a link to my socials as well as the playlist.
Okay, perfect. And I'll just remind the viewers that are watching this that I will have all of Lorraine's links down below, the link for the book, the link for her website, any of the socials she wants to list out, anything that she wants to, put out there for you to be able to find her. All those links will be down below when you're watching this video. So let's talk about the book. Why don't you give the viewers the title of your book and give us a kind of a synopsis or a summary about what the book's about.
Okay. The title is going to be Part 1, The Teenage Life of Juniper Justice. So for this book, it's about the youngest daughter of a very famous actress. And the actress was Clarissa Clyde, and she was famous from the 80s to the early 2000s. And she was known for being a sex symbol and having mature scenes, as well as being unlucky in love and having 7 different children. And then, unfortunately, majority of her loves did pass away tragically before she died. So this story kind of tells the story of her youngest daughter being raised by her oldest daughter. And Juniper's the only one who looks like her mother, and she's the only one who wants to become an actress and be in the spotlight. And like her family's afraid of like what happened to their mom. So it's kind of like Juniper coming of age, deciding to go for her dreams, but at the same time she meets her first love, and like it's a first love heartbreak experience for her.
Okay. Is this a story you've had in your mind for a long time that you're thinking about writing?
Kind of. It came to me back in 2020, like right before COVID hit.
Okay. Now, in this book, in the first book here, did you have a favorite scene in the book?
I do. I'm trying to think. It was, I believe, chapter 12. In chapter 12, so I have one chapter called chapter 6 called foreshadowing, where I kind of sneak in pretty much what's going to happen, but there's going to be obstacles thrown in the way before that happens. But chapter 12, it gives you like a huge kind of foreshadowing of her relationship with her love, Ryan. So just right there, like I wrote it in. And I just love that part because of what symbolizes of what's to come.
Okay. That does sound like a good thing. And is that something you planned in your initial writing, or is that something that kind of came about as you were doing it?
So it's very unique. I decided to write part 1 first. So I wrote it down, and it was just to get the idea out of my head. And then I kind of wanted to see where it worked as a series. So I actually wrote them all. And then after I finished it, I was like, I'm not happy with part 1. Like, I need more out of it. So for part 1, technically, I did go back and I changed that one the most out of the other ones I'm planning to do. So like right now, I'm just revising. My editor changed some stuff, so I'm just trying to accommodate that.
Okay.
And like making it prettier, polished. So for that part, when I rewrote part 1, since I knew how the story ended, that's why I changed it.
Okay. And how many books do you plan on this being?
So just for Juniper, it's gonna be 5 parts.
Okay.
But I plan on like certain movies that her and her mom will like be in and portray. I would like to develop that and maybe write a book for them. Like if I find that it's worth writing in book form, then I will write it in book form.
Okay. So you plan on starting roughly with the 5 for the actual storyline, but you do have like offshoots of stories that you would go if it made sense.
Yes.
Okay. On the opposite side of that, did you have a scene that was really like a hard scene to come together?
For part 1, let me see. It's so hard because I've done all 5. So, I think for the most part, what I did was like each chapter, I would kind of write like what would happen and what I want to convey. For part 1, I wouldn't say there's that much of a difficult scene for me.
Okay.
Maybe like the other parts, but not 1.
On the other ones when you did later. Okay. One of the questions I always like to ask, and it depends on the storyline or the book that you're writing. But I always like to ask the question in terms of if you did any research for the story, right? And the reason I like to ask that is for any writers that are starting out and starting to write and trying to do a book, it's very important for you to do that research, even sometimes if it's just a little bit, because hold on,
Is it breaking up
you
on
still
your
there?
end? Yeah.
No, for some reason I'll edit this out, but for some reason it opened up TikTok. I don't know why it went back over there. Um, hold on, it did it again. Let me just close that. Okay, that's closed now. I left it open where I sent you the link because I just want to make sure that you got it. So I always leave it open in the background, but for some reason it's trying to open itself up and push this thing out of the way. But again, I'll edit all this out of the way.
Okay.
I like to ask the question about research for really the younger writers or writers who are starting out, because I always want them to understand that research, even if it's just a little bit, is very important, because your readers will catch it quickly if you don't know really what you're talking about, right? And if you're writing about something that you yourself hasn't experienced and you don't really do the little bit of research to figure it out, almost always 100% of the time a reader will catch that. And just so you're talking about somebody in the rodeo, just so happens that one of your readers is in the rodeo, they go like, wait a minute, this doesn't make sense. So it's important for that research, even if it's just a little sprinkle that you need to do. So did you do any specific research, one for book one or essentially for the series?
I did. I did a lot. Um, so with Brian Knox being in the NFL, I knew briefly about football. And then slowly, like, TikTok has been a great source of research for me. I look up plays, I learned the positions. I listen to podcasts on football. And then when it comes down to movies, I have a little bit of experiences, but there was certain things like I found an intimacy coordinator on TikTok, and she kind of explained how that process. So I went back and I followed her rules rather than just kind of writing it.
Mm-hmm.
And then there was other things that I did that I can't say yet.
Yeah.
But yeah, TikTok has been a great source. I'll read it. I have a notebook just based on football facts now, so I was like, I need to write this down and know it. And then I went to a couple of games. So I was like, okay, so this is the environment of how it is. So I remember like my first NFL game. I was like, I need to understand the environment, what happens during the game. So yeah.
Do you find yourself liking the game now, or is it just all still really the research?
I do. I really like it. Now I'm like, oh my gosh, I created a football player. I'm basically a football player. But yeah, and then technically this year, he would be eligible for the draft. So I'm like hearing, I'm like, in an alternate universe, he would be drafted.
Yeah.
But
Yeah, and really, if you were to write those in the stories later or that, you do have that coming up in like March and April with the combine. That would be that whole thing that kind of gives you that background of it, because that's 24 hours a day, really, for a couple of weeks of just information that comes out of that.
Yeah, and then I think right now with Taylor Swift dating Travis Kelce, every girl's getting more into football, and I'm like, wait a second, I wrote this right before. But I mean, it's a great experience. And then I use certain characters and be like, what's a down? And then I'll use another character to explain it. Or if one of my characters does something dumb, I use another one to call them out. So.
Did you actually? So here's a question that's interesting. Did you actually like football before you did the research, or was it actually as you started doing the research and watching and going through that, you just kind of started, enjoying it?
I think I enjoyed it more. Like I liked it a little bit, but I didn't like it enough to voluntarily watch it. So once I started the research, I watched the seasons. I look at the standings. I'm like, oh, this person, pay attention to the divisions, their stats, all that now. So I just went down the rabbit hole.
And that's what happens
Like,
sometimes with this stuff, right?
yeah, on the Super Bowl, I was like, oh my God, that was insane.
Do you have a favorite team now, or are you just kind of watching?
Well, like, I like a couple teams, and then they kind of, right now I'm in between. I'm like, I want to try different fandoms to see um, what's my forever team.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm looking for that.
Yeah. Take your time, right? Because I've I've followed a team for a long time, and it's usually a heartbreak. Nothing ever happens at the end. So
Yes,
take your time and pick the one that you're confident to stick with.
yes.
Um, so this genre of this book would be what? What did this classified under?
I put it as adult fiction just because I wasn't 100% comfortable with like the mature scenes to be
Hmm.
considered as YA. It
Okay.
could be. It is coming of age, so I put it under that. It has that sports romance element, and it deals with grief and kind of tragedy of what happened with her mom. So it's kind
Okay.
of between.
Okay. And so you've written essentially the 5 books, right? So you really have kind of the other 4 books
Sorry.
um, ready to go. Um, do you feel do you feel those 4 books are essentially done, or will you kind of go back through and you may make adjustments um, as you reread, as you re-edit, or kind of just browse back through them?
Well, like for the most part, I wrote it in present tense. So after that, my editor kind of changed it to past tense. So sorry. Do you want
It's all
to
right.
do that?
You're good. You're good.
I'm sorry. It's because someone's car alarm's going off. Um, so originally I wrote it in present tense, and then my author changed it to be in past tense, like her normal narration, because she also has diary entries, so that one stayed the same.
Okay.
And for that, the other ones are still written present tense, so I have to go and fix it. And then I think there's just like small little things that I want to tweak it, and just make sure it is at least 70,000 words, because that's like the minimum for adult fiction.
Okay. Did do you have a game plan of like how you want to release these? Is there a time period, or are you just going to kind of go as it goes?
I have two different versions in my head. Like, it just depends on like this one. The editing process was really fast, so like getting it formatted and then getting back the copy and making sure everything was perfect was too fast for me. Um, so this one I want a little bit more time so I can have that spaced out, and I also work full time, so
Yeah.
it's just in between that. But I have a couple of ideas. um, in regards of release dates, I try to make it symbolic to the story. So February 17th is an extremely symbolic date in her story.
Okay. Okay, that makes sense. So as you're looking forward, right? Say you release the 5 books, um, all 5 have been released. Say you do or don't release the side versions, right? The sub stories of the, like you said, the movies or some other stuff going along the story. Do you have other things in the future that you're thinking of writing? Is there another genre, or do you have, like most of us do, we have a bunch of different story ideas kind of floating in the back. Do you have another one that you're kind of like, when this is done, I really want to kind of, go after this one?
Um, I have a lot just within her world, not just from her point of view to plan out. And then a lot of like story ideas I had before I came up with this one, I incorporated by making it into a movie.
Mm-hmm.
And eventually I would like a specific story, but there's just so many kinks I want to work out. But that I would be a TV series. I don't see it as a book. If that makes sense.
Okay. Okay. Is there any other genres you want to try in the future, or I mean, because really most stories are multiple genres, right? It's not, you can put it in a certain genre as the majority, but everything has elements of something in it. Is there like another genre that maybe you enjoy reading that at some point you're like, either I want to put more elements of that in my stories, or it's really something you want to try to write later on?
Maybe fantasy. Like the only issue with that is the world building. So it'll just be learning how to world build on that one. And
Yeah.
I know there's like elements that you kind of have to follow or change up as well.
Yeah. Okay. Um, since this is a question really specifically for you because you did essentially write all 5 books of your story, but are you one, you have the terms plotter or pantser or whatever, but are you one that really outlined your story, or did you let it kind of organically grow as you wrote it?
I think with each one, originally I thought it was supposed to be 3 books. And I was like, no, I need to make it longer. So I split the last two in half. Um, so there were certain times where I would outline it, but there was certain elements going on in my life that I was like, oh, let me add it. So an example would be like a Thanksgiving scene, and that happened because it was Thanksgiving time. Or I saw the Elvis movie, and I was like, I need to incorporate Elvis in here. Um, so it was kind of both ways. Because there's certain chapters I try to meet 25 chapters per book. For her, for any other book, I want it to be different. Um,
Okay.
even the side stories are that. So I had to like think of what fillers I could do. So that came into
Okay, so you're holding yourself to essentially 25 chapters, 70,000 words per each then, correct?
yes.
Did you find that difficult at some points? Because, as you're writing sometimes a story may be a little tighter than that. And did you find yourself having to really kind of, hold on one second, everybody? Okay.
Okay, what was that?
Yeah. Did you find yourself at some point having, trouble with that in terms of hitting the word count or the chapter count as you were breaking it down or as you were writing it?
For part 2 to 4, yes. 2 to 4, that one I kind of struggle, which is why I kind of want to go back and just tweak it and
Yeah.
make sure it is at the 70K. For part 5, that one has too many words, so I need to pick that one.
So you need to cut that one down.
I think so. There might be some things I might cut out from the original draft. 2 people read it from front start to finish. I was like, I was like, do you want to sign an NDA? So they did. I was like, you can't tell anybody. And so I might just tweak certain things. So like when they read this book, it's like the first time this version because they read a different version. Um, so yeah, I think so. And then for parts 2 to 5, I did add a prologue to them. So
Okay. Yeah. How did you feel with like the beta reader side? I thought it was actually very helpful because I got a lot of little comments that were not really changing the story, but just like little things like, oh, I noticed this, or I kind of thought this, and as they were mentioning, I go, that does kind of make sense. I didn't really think of that as I was writing it. How was your experience with like beta readers going through that?
they're like extremely useful.
Yeah.
So I know like I had to work on certain characters chemistry, and then an example, she was like, for part one in particular, she was like, it kind of sounds like she's an adult, make it sound more teen like, on a certain comment. So I was like, okay, that works. So I switched that up. But I think for the two people that read the series in total, they I just asked them, does it work all together? Because I can't just release the one.
Yeah.
And that's partially why I decided to go the indie route, because I knew I had to do the series, not the one book.
Yeah. I mean, really, it goes back to, there's a couple of things. The thing is, self-publishing or indie route is valid. It's a very valid version of publishing, right? And all indie authors are valid authors. I mean, they're very talented. There's so many that I've met in doing this podcast and just in general that are extremely talented and just really good at what they do. And it's a shame sometimes when you hear some of the things where they're not thought of sometimes equally with a traditionally published um, author, right? And the balance or what you lose in that, and a lot of people don't seem to realize that, is you lose really your voice when you go traditionally published, right? Because, like you said, they may have only given you the one book and said, no, we're only going to give you the one, make sure the story is done after the one, or they may want to take it a different direction. You lose a lot of that control, right? You lose a lot of what that story is for you when you go traditionally published and take it out of the indie route or the self-published route. And, you know, I don't know if it's worth it trying to go sometimes traditionally published when that's the cost of it, where it's no longer your voice. It's maybe the shell of your voice or the overall makeup of your voice. It's really not your voice anymore, right? And it's a shame because a lot of the indie authors I read and their books sometimes, are different, and different's not bad. They're written differently. They come from a different angle, a different type of voice, and that's the beauty of it, right? You keep that artistic part of it without losing that.
Mm-hmm. I think so. For me, I think self-publish are extremely hardworking because you go beyond. You don't just write the book. You find the editor, find the cover artist, you format it or find someone to format it. You get the beta readers or readers. Um, then you market it, which is hard. Uh,
Yeah.
but for like traditionally published, those for me, it just wasn't for me. And I don't think that's going to be the same case for everybody. Everyone's different. And, that traditionally publish, you do the hard work, it starts, and you get the help, which is great. But I just felt for me, self publishing was perfect because, like, I decided everything. Uh, the cover, I worked with a cover artist named Sasha, and she kind of like, we bounced ideas off, and I picked the font, and like I remember just, I'm like, this isn't the right font, that's not it. And then finally I found it. I'm like, this is a font that I need on my book. And it's just small things like that that you put into it.
Yeah. Yeah, and then honestly, that's the reason I try to do as much as I can to support the other indie authors for that real reason, is that not only is it a passion for all of us, right? It's something we truly love and enjoy. But like you said, it's a lot of work because most of us have a regular job and we do this on the side, right?
Mm-hmm.
Most of us don't make any money really doing this. You're not really getting sales to support rent or mortgage or anything, but we love it, right? And that's why I do everything I can to try to support other indie authors, this podcast for one, and try to get everybody out there, or even on all the socials, reposting and sharing, is for that reason. Because I understand, I know how hard it is to do everything on your own. I know how much of yourself everybody puts in their work because it's you, right? It's really your heart and soul you put in these stories. And I appreciate that, and I want to try to do whatever I can to get everybody out there.
Yes, I think so. Now, now that I know, I'm like, oh, indie author. Oh, I can't wait to read it. After I finish rewriting part 2, I'm taking like a month or 2 off, and I'm just reading. I'm like, I'm
Yeah.
just gonna go on a reading binge. I'm gonna take a break from my brain and then go back and start part 3's process.
Yeah, I
But yeah,
mean,
someone commented, they're like, nice. Someone commented on my book and they're like, "Oh, I love the font." I'm like, "Oh my gosh, you don't understand how hard that was to find."
yeah, I mean, every little aspect, right? Every little aspect, it's you. You're sitting there making the decision of the look, the feel, like you said, the format, everything, because it's yours, right? It's yours. You're putting out there. But that's the beauty of it. Again, when people appreciate it and love it, it just means so much more, right? Because it really was yours. It really was yours that you put out there.
Yeah. Yeah.
So this episode is going to air much later in the year, and your book comes out February 17th.
Yes.
So I will try to release clips from the interview right along the same time as your book comes out. You know, I'll release it on TikTok for sure. I always release everything on Twitter as well to get it over there to all the people on that side that read and watch this. But I'll definitely get out there. Again, I'll leave all the links down below for the actual episode of this. But I just want to thank you really for coming on, Larae. I really enjoyed the conversation, finding out more about your book. Can't wait to get it out there. And I definitely, you always you have my help to share the stuff out there and try to get your links and your book out there for people to find. And but I do appreciate you coming on today to the show.
Okay. I had a question. Are you having trouble tagging people on TikTok? I don't think it's allowing me anymore.
Um, it does off and on, gives me trouble, but it may be sometimes they do like a small restriction.
Uh-huh.
When you've done too much, maybe you follow too much or you posted too much, or they maybe, some of the stuff got cut off with the audios or something.
Oh yeah.
There's just all these little things that they constantly do. So I've noticed like sometimes I had trouble messaging anybody, and it's somebody I've messaged before, and they just won't go through. And then maybe a couple of hours later, or the next day, it's fine. So I think they're just little glitches. A lot of times, as these things grow, and more people sign on, more and more people are using it, you just start having all these little issues until they figure out the bandwidth they need for what they have going.
Okay. Yeah, because you told me to tag you, and I just haven't been able to. I'm like, where'd you guys go? That's so funny. Here. Yeah.
But again, I want to thank you for coming on, Larae. I want to thank the viewers for watching this as well, and don't forget to subscribe and hit the notifications so you don't miss all the amazing, talented authors like Larae and all the ones coming up.
Okay.
Thank you again for
Definitely.
watching.
All right.
Bye.
Bye.